So welcome everybody, this is Testing Times, this is episode 3 and today I'm joined by Tony Waite. Good afternoon, Tony.
Good afternoon, John. How are you doing?
I'm very well, so yourself?
Yep, very well, thank you.
So oh good, that's good, we like to hear that. What are you busy with?
Oh, all sorts of things at the moment. We've got a big rollout for co-op going on. Rooftop solar. We've got a utility scale ground mount starting pretty soon.
Good.
So yeah, things
That's
are
new.
Yeah, new thing that we're moving into. I see sort of a natural progression from being the best at rooftop solar to now becoming the best at utility scale.
That's a
PV.
Good
so
ambition.
yeah, it's interesting and exciting, which is the important thing.
Good. We've got off to a flying start there. I think potentially what I'd like to do for the viewers and anyone else who's listening is just to talk about you as a person in the first instance, how we met each other.
Yep.
How we've potentially got to where we've
Long
got to. As well. Yeah. Well. Yeah. Yeah. We're still around.
Still around.
We're still pals.
Getting older. Still pals. Ups and downs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So God, going back, we've known each other for I can't remember how many years it is now. I remember my best mate working for you in Halifax at one point, and that's sort of how we got introduced, and more sort of on the social scale and around the rugby circles.
Mm-hmm.
And then fast forward probably 30 years, and we're now working together, and things are good.
Yeah, I think that that friendship potentially makes it's a bit of a resonating story through any kind of real client that we have. You know, we've got really good relationships with the people that we work with, and unfortunately sometimes that has a little bit of a tendency to kind of impinge things slightly from a point of view that you're the only outward facing part of the business. But
I think, you know, some people would say that working with friends can become difficult. I don't agree. To me, personal relationships are extremely valuable, and you've certainly got that element of trust there. Sometimes I'm a little bit too trusting in people, but that's just the way that I am. And my business has been built on relationships with clients, with people that I work with. So ultimately, that's the most important thing for me.
I think as a supplier, as a partnership sort of organisation in what you're doing, that is really kind of, it's liquid gold to a certain extent. I think the thing is that obviously we had a long period of time where we haven't seen each other, but sort of fast forward into sort of maybe COVID period, and we're looking for things to do, and you get your old book
yeah,
out
absolutely.
And
Listen, everybody's got a life. Everybody's got a life. Everybody's got a story, and sometimes life takes over. We have families. We have young kids. You know, business isn't the most important thing at certain times, and the most important thing is putting food on the table and supporting your family, and you sort of go through that period. I always had a dream that I wanted to run my own business. I sort of fell into this industry accidentally, really, after suffering a loss, and sort of a great cliche that from every entrepreneur that you know you've got to fall to realise. And it's absolutely true. I've made so many mistakes and I've fallen so many times that you've just got to get back up, get back on the horse, and from a really bad place where I was in 2008, I fell into the electrical industry with you know, my best mate who had a small electrical contracting firm, and again we stumbled across solar, and we've not really looked back since that point. And the journey from sort of 2008 to where we are now is it's a special one. That's a whole story on its own. You know, could be sat here for 2 hours talking about that, but you know, where we are right now is in the place where I always dreamed we would be, and knew we would be, to be honest.
Yeah. So I mean, that in itself, I can identify with that. I think we've had a lot of conversations, and Lottie, who's looking after the presentation and all this kind of thing from a shot blast side. You know, that again is another sort of personal relationship. You know, so you kind of tend to default back to these people because you can trust them, because they will go the extra mile and they won't let you down. And I think that's kind of key with sort of anything that you do. But that outward projection from you is quite key. And I know you like to sit in the background and I know that you like to make sure that basically everybody's doing what they need to do, but your impetus behind the whole thing, even though you think you're invisible, you're certainly not.
Absolutely, and I think, you know, a lot comes with learning, and I've always been a sportsman. You know, I've been involved in rugby pretty much all my life. I've coached teams, and you sort of get to the end of your career. What am I going to do now? And you know, business is what turns me on these days, and it has done probably now for the last 10 years. And I use a lot of sporting analogies with day-to-day business, and you know, I hate these people that say, "Oh, he works for me, she works for me." We don't. My business isn't run like that. We work together. We work as a team, and I'm just captaining that team. I'm trying to lead from the front. You know, there's not anything in my so from even the last sort of 5 years from where we were to where we are right now. You know, we went through a period of real hardship when government knocked feeding tariffs on the head, and you know, I'd just got my business to where it wanted to be, and then government slashed feeding tariffs, and then I'm back down to square one. And I'm thinking, bloody hell, I don't want to be here again. What do we need to do? How do we need to change and adapt? So I literally spent 3 years on my own in an office on my own, trying to build relationships and little jobs here and there to keep my head above water. Fortunately, it all worked. We got to 2018, no government interference. And we can start building a solid business, not based on subsidies or feeding tariffs or anything like that, which I think has been the key. You know that.
Yeah, I think. Well, so I joined GMI. I joined their renewables division at the time. We changed the renewables, GMI Renewables, to GMI Energy. The idea was to try and focus on potentially providing solutions that were fit for purpose at a decent payback period, because obviously that was the game back then. Everything had to pay back, still does now. But it's like the sort of impetus has changed, or the focus has kind of changed. But I remember we brought in a new CEO. He banked on the fact that the government weren't going to alter anything with the feeding tariffs, and lo and behold, in 2014, everybody got a smack in the face with a solar panel. So it's like the key was, from my perspective, I'd gone down the consultancy route by this particular time. So I'd originally gone in to do almost like business development to a certain extent, but I'd very quickly developed my own opinion about solar, specifically around that time, insofar as it only stood up because of the government support. And so therefore then for me it wasn't a real solution. I were at odds with the company that I'd gone to join to kind of promote solar as a solution, as part of a package. But my view on what we consider is energy management was always about, right, what can we do to reduce energy? What can we do to stop people from wasting energy, and all of that sort of thing. And because the government gave away this incentive, it was almost like, let's fill the roof full of solar and
get paid for generating.
Get paid for it, you know, and see the benefit. And then realistically also as well, it was like a very, very large sticking plaster on the top of a building, which then meant that there wasn't anything else that people needed to think about, which is totally wrong. I mean, fast forward now, all those installs that were done 2010 onwards, we're going back to and doing performance audits on those systems, and no one's known whether they've been working for the last 15 years.
Absolutely, and none of these systems have been maintained or monitored for the lifetime. We saw a lot of companies that have come into the industry, thought they could get rich quick, probably a double glazing style business that come in, try to make a lot of money on the back of the feeding tariffs, selling cheap solar systems, installed ridiculously badly, and now those businesses are paying the price. Things have completely changed. All the let's say cowboys have dropped out of the industry, and we're sort of on an even keel. And I always said from day one, I'm not going to compromise on quality to win a job. So if I go down and sit with a client, I'm absolutely honest, and they get what they ask for, and they'll get an honest opinion. Again, I started Sol PV Group as a consultant. That's how I wanted to start. Basically because I saw all these cowboys. So I'd go sit down with people that spoke to me and say, Tony, come and give me some help, give me some advice. And that sort of then turned into, well, I can actually install better than the guys that you're getting quotes from.
Absolutely.
So let's sit down, let's break these quotations down, these proposals, and see what we can do and where we can go. And that's how I started, and then we've sort of built now into a bigger business, and you know, some of the multi-megawatt rooftop jobs we're doing is pretty sensational. But we also offer that post installation service as well. We're not going anywhere. So we've seen a lot of repeat clients that have come back and said, "Wow, this has been brilliant. We've had a payback in less than 2 years. I want to put some more solar on my roof. What can we do?" Then we're looking at additional battery storage. There's so many things that we're doing now to move forward, to diversify, to help our clients to become less grid reliant, which is key, because there's a few clients that I know that literally being held to ransom because there's no capacity in certain grid areas, which is becoming painful. But there's work going on with that. We're part of Solar Energy UK. We're lobbying government. We're looking for ways to improve. We're here to help, not be a hindrance. So I think that's sort of another real key thing to what we're trying to do moving forward.
So are you suggesting then that you are the go-to company in terms of being able to look at it holistically then? Or?
I think, listen, there's a lot of really good companies out there. We've gone along in the background and we've done what we've done, and as I sort of alluded to earlier, my business is built on not just personal relationships, but relationships within the organisation and the team that we've built. You know, we're going back to the sort of friendship thing. I've got my best friend working in the business. I've got my wife working in the business. Everybody, we've got a relationship, and we've had it for a number of years.
Yeah.
And it absolutely works for us. And being that close means we can make decisions together. We can make decisions quickly, much more than a big corporate company. So it's good, and I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky to have the people that I've got.
Well, I think you make your own luck. I think potentially it goes along the lines of the more you practice, the luckier you get. But I think the key is around potentially you lead from the front, and that's what I've always admired in what you do, which potentially means that, you know, like when we do business, it's relatively straightforward.
Absolutely, we can sit down for an hour, and you know, even if we've not seen each other for a month or so, we'll get to the bottom of what we need to do, how we need to do it, and we'll put a strategy in place and get it done. The co-op rollout that we won was a prime example. You came in, you've surveyed, you've audited sites, which I wanted. I wanted somebody independent, and I said that to co-op. Listen, let's get somebody independent that can come in, that can audit your sites, and you've been a great partner on that front, and we'll keep it going.
I think that that adaptation for us was almost like the first sort of dalliance that we had towards potentially not just doing the consultancy piece, but then also doing the advisory part as well. So we have other clients where we've now actually physically gone to retro audit sites, come up with these performance indications and make those happen. The thing is that I remember coming to talk to you, and you just said you just run at everything that you possibly can. And again, that kind of gave me a little bit more sort of energy.
It's one of those, and we laugh about it in the office. You know, I'm one of these people that will say yes to everything.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Then learn how to do it
sure.
Afterwards, and that's key and critical. You know, I'm not risk averse by any sense, and I'll if I don't know something, I'll be honest and I'll say it, but I'll go away and I'll find out, and I'll work out a way how to do things, and how to answer those questions that have been put in front of me, and I think that's really important.
I think for me, you seem to be able to analyse things really quickly, and then always potentially, because of maybe all of the mistakes and the corrective actions that you've taken, everything now feels like a positive step moving in those directions.
I don't get it right. You've been nice there. I don't get it right all the time, but yeah, I think so, and I think having such a fantastic team around me really helps. I've got the support of my wife, who how she's still with me, I've no idea, because I've probably put her through it more than anyone. But it's absolutely key that we can make those decisions as a business and together. My senior management team is amazing, and we know we've added a few more people into that over the last couple of years. An FD, a financial manager. I've just brought somebody else in this week, so yeah, moving forward in the right direction, and it's key. You know, anybody who thinks they can do it all themselves is a fool, and probably I've been a fool. But again, it's something that I've learned along the way.
It's a very difficult thing to potentially start something, then let other people do it. I struggle with it big time.
Absolutely.
You know, and the more we're kind of growing now, the more risk. I profile it in a different way.
When it's your baby, it's really difficult to give up that. It might be a little piece, but when you've done it and you've nurtured it and you've got to that place, actually giving that responsibility away becomes really difficult. Financially, that was always really difficult for me. I've done everything, and I've had an FD and a finance manager now for the last 2 years. Yeah. And by God, it was the best two hires that I've ever made.
I think that so the likes of Richard, your FD, you know, he's come in, he's got a background in banking,
corporate finance.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like, you know, those kind of roles for you are really, really important. And I think what Richard's been able to do is take it off you without feeling like he's had to rip it out of your hands.
Completely.
And I think that's again down to the fact that, you know, I've been doing our end of month with our office manager today, and it's a proper pain in the backside.
Yeah.
Due to
but when you're doing that and you're paying wages every week, and you're doing all these jobs, which don't get me wrong, I love doing, but
it's great to have an identity.
It takes away from what I'm good at.
Yeah.
Where I should be. And
this is the thing.
I think that's the problem.
That, you know, we drew a skill fund matrix with the 1 to 9 in the boxes, and the 9 was what you're good at and what do you like doing, and all the other stuff realistically you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, and how many ones are in
loads
that
of
matrix?
Them. You know, I'm still doing banking, I'm still paying wages, I'm still talking to my accountant, blah blah blah. So it's like, you know, let's get rid of all of that, because, you know, if
it's converting them 1s to 9s.
Well,
that's the key.
But
you can't do it all at once.
No. But it's the whole thing about potentially building a business in the first instance, having that structure which allows that growth to happen, but then also having the nous to be able to say, right, I don't like doing this and I'm not very good at it, so you've got to be honest, and then you move away from it, and then all of a sudden it starts to feel like you're running a business.
Which is exactly it. And, you know, I look back, I was talking to my mum a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about business and where we were, and I said to my mum, I honestly don't know how we've gone from that point to that point. But we've done it, and we've done it somehow. And again, I put it down to the team that I've got, and the relationships within that team. Listen, it's not always sunshine and rainbows.
No.
And we have our disagreements, but, you know, I wouldn't want to change any part of who we've got in this organisation. And I think when people want to stay and they believe in it, and they've got a leader that they can trust, then, you know, we're in a really, really good position.
You worked for a while in a big company.
I worked, so when I fell into the electrical industry with Chris, who's now our ops director, he was running an electrical contracting firm, and we knew what was coming on the back of solar and the government introducing feed-in tariffs. We thought it was a really good avenue that we could look at, and we could generate some. It's about making money, and we could generate some money, and we did that on a residential scale. We were one of the best residential installers at that point. But again, government interference, feed-in tariffs change, and I did some work for a guy over in Manchester who was working for a company called Thermotech at that point, and literally headhunted me to go set up their new renewable division. They were a big fire suppressant company working for some big global companies, your Marks and Spencers and all those kind of people, putting fire sprinkler systems in. But they were just in a transition and going through an exit with Foresight, so they wanted to bolt on an energy business. And yeah, I went in and set that up. Great, learnt a lot of lessons. The people that I worked for were fantastic. But, you know, always sort of coming back to the fact, you're going out, you're building these businesses for others. Yeah. Need to do it for myself. But that came after I'd been after I'd been burned first time, I sort of set up a business with someone else, and it completely failed and put me in a bad place, a really bad place that didn't see a way out of at one point. And the sort of the transition, and again I go back, that's down to my wife and my kids for pulling me through that, as well as Chris, who sort of trusted me and give me a job at that time. He didn't pay me right well, but he gave me a job. So yeah, it's been a emotional roller coaster.
I can tell. I think I did a very similar thing when I went to GMI, but I felt like those lessons I learned about being involved in a business, being part of a structure, having to do certain things that you wouldn't ordinarily have to do, like reporting back to the board and all that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
It's a great skill to have, and I think also as well, when you've done that, and then you decide, and then you wake up one morning and going, I know I'm making them a load of money.
Yeah. Well, you see the good and the bad as well.
Absolutely.
You know,
you've got the protection, haven't you?
I saw things in their business which I thought, well, you could do this bit differently, you could do that differently. But probably I held back a little bit because, you know, I had my vision, I had my dream of where I wanted to be, and that's what I started to concentrate on. Still got great relationships with the guys.
Yeah.
You know, I left after about 16 months, and we to set up Sol PV Group, and it was just the perfect time.
I think these things happen, don't they, for a reason. I think also as well, though, when you went into that job, you would have been thinking very much along the lines of what I thought as well. I need to prove that I can work for somebody. I need to prove that I can go through this process.
At that level of pretty big business as well. You know, I remember I walked into the interview, and I've got four blokes sat in front of me, and we talked about a lot of stuff. We had a real laugh. It was just a formal chat rather than an interview. And we were sat there, and obviously I've always been sort of entrepreneurial throughout all my life, and you have a dream of where you want to be. And you know, they said to me, Tony, where do you want to be? I said, I want to be sat where you four guys are. That's where I want to be. And they looked at me and said, well, you sat in a room with 4 millionaires, who do you think will be the next one? And that conversation has resonated with me since I've set up. And I think, you know, I spoke to them a few times, and they're proud of where I've got to. Yeah, it's been good.
I think that, again, that goes back to the power of the relationship, innit?
Yeah, of course.
You don't let people down.
No.
And effectively you keep moving in the right direction.
Absolutely. And listen, we all make mistakes.
Yeah, of course.
And it's about understanding those and putting your hand up and saying, I fucked up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's all right.
And we move forward. And if you can do that and you can admit that, again, people like the fact that you're getting that level of honesty.
Yeah, honesty is a massive thing. Don't get me wrong, you have to potentially work around things that have become sort of like tricky. You know, always reverse engineering things and stuff like that. You know, the analogy I once learned when I was an apprentice was, if you do anything wrong, always make sure that basically I don't find out, or have the bollocks to make sure
to stand up
and tell me that you have.
Yeah, well,
but the worst thing to do is to find out.
Yeah, well, the worst thing to do is to find out from your client.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I'll give you a prime example. My son works for the business. He's now a fully qualified electrician, but during his training, he ended up blowing a fuse and a whole court went off. Well, I needed to know about that because I've got the client ringing me saying, what's going on, Tony? You rang us and told us, and I went, oh, listen, let me find out, and we'll go through it. So yeah, just little exampple that we learn from it, and we've all learned from it throughout the business. Oliver certainly did, because he got a bit of a fright. But
shit happens. But
yeah, absolutely.
The key around it is that obviously you've got that's the mechanism.
Yeah,
and I think that's also as well something that comes from confidence. So, you know, if you have made a mistake before and then you've been able to kind of like work around it, then your level of confidence potentially goes up.
Yeah, listen, everybody always thinks in the head it's worse than it actually is.
Oh, absolutely.
And when you actually sit down and talk about it, well, it wasn't actually our fault. It was a fault in the store. So you know these things happen, and there's way around it. But when you sit down and talk and say we've messed up, but yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the work with the co-op then.
Yeah.
Because obviously that's something that set us off in a different direction, both of us. I think the key was from our side, you needed that level of independence. We were able to skin up a sort of prospect of how we'd potentially go about doing these audits, gathering the data in the right way, and presenting it back to you guys in order for you to be able to quite literally turn up at site and fit the solar. How did we? I can't actually remember how we actually physically got there. Was it just another series of conversations? And
I think sort of we came into it. When was it? 2021. We'd got the nod that we'd won the Central England Co-op rollout, which was sort of 230 stores to install PV on, and we'd done 2 test sites, and they were blown away by the level of professionalism and what we'd done. I'd actually surveyed them myself, so I knew they were going to be good ones. But yeah, we got to that point.
Well, we went out on a survey, and I didn't think your survey skills were that good. But
I was just testing you. No, I think we got to that point where we really needed some help as well, because we were getting busy. We'd got some big work in the pipeline. We were doing other things, big rooftop jobs, and the co-op was one of those where to do it how I wanted to do it and roll it out quickly, to please the client, to make sure that they were getting the level of professionalism and service that they wanted and they required and they expected. Was really key. And we sort of sat down and discussed things, and there wasn't anybody else that I would have asked to come on board and help us. And that relationship now has built on with 2-3 years down the line. And yeah, we've had a few ups and downs again, and business has been difficult, but we're getting back to that point. You go from 2023 where we'd just gone out to Munich to the big solar show. And everybody's talking about, energy prices are going to be ridiculous. This is going to happen. They're going to be, they're going to be a pound a kilowatt. And it was like, no, that can't possibly happen anyway. Roll on a month, and energy prices started to rise, and Russia invaded Ukraine, and things just went absolutely bananas. Then we've got clients coming to us, people that I know, people that I've known for a long time, that I'm trying to talk to, I'm trying to get into, I'm trying to ask them to trust me, to say this is what you're going to do eventually. Coming forward and saying my bills have gone from 10 pence per unit to 58 pence per unit literally overnight. I've got a £3 million energy bill that's just going to wipe all my profit out. What can I do? Well, let's start doing this. Let's develop something. Let's get you a system on the roof, and we'll start generating your own power. And we had so much of that. The logical, the right decision was to partner with you guys and bring you on board to look after the co-op. Massive, my biggest client. I wouldn't have trusted it with anybody else, and I think that speaks volumes for our relationship.
Sure.
Again, sort of key things, and we've done it. We've rolled out nearly 190 stores for Central now. We're just in the process of rolling out for Lincolnshire Co-op. We've just been put onto framework for Co-op Group. Again, massive contracts and relationships that we're building. So
that's slightly different.
To
220 stores. So we set off doing batches of 50 at a time or something. For the first batch that we're doing, really, it's a work in progress. But what we were finding also as well, that because a lot of the stores were fairly local, we started in Sheffield and stuff like that. We'd go and audit a store the week before, and then we'd be driving back past that store a week after, and there's solar on the roof already. So it's like, oblige, I know that we'd kind of trying to come up with a sort of format of support that allowed you to be able to do that, but there's a difference between rapid and then actually what you physically did as well, because it were beyond rapid.
It was pretty special how we started and what we did, but we set out, and again, the team we've put the process in place to be able to manage these sort of significant rollouts. Not only that, we were rolling out for Euro garages at the same time. So
bits of Starbucks going on.
Yeah, we had all kinds of things going on.
Yeah.
We've really become the specialists in these sort of
multi-rollouts,
multi-megawatt, multi-site rollouts. And then we're installing for other businesses on rooftop, doing 2 megawatt installs. So it just catapulted us into a completely different category.
It did for us as well.
Yeah.
You know, so we've got with that as a support service now. You know, we sell that to other, well, we work for other co-ops.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think, you know, the other benefit is that you've followed the path and the journey with us. Sorry, and now we're working on the operation and maintenance side, which a lot of businesses don't do. I still can't understand why they're not doing it.
We've got 5 minutes, Tony. I want to try and get a couple of stats out of you. So you know the
you said no stats.
Well, just a quick one. So, but this is volume oriented.
Right.
So you know you've done 220 stores.
Yeah. Well, probably done 190. You've surveyed 220, so you owe me about 30 grand.
We did 150. So, but what's the size of that? Just for relevance, do you know what's the kilowatt peak?
So the total scale was about 12 megawatt across the central co-op retail portfolio. It's changed slightly. We've had some issues with the later batches with leasehold, and think the process takes a little bit longer. But now we're sort of going back and we're looking at the co-op investment portfolio, because they don't just own their own retail stores, they own other stores for other retailers as well, and the sort of background behind it is quite significant, and they're just a magnificent organisation to work for. We've built up a really strong relationship, and
they've got some good key players in there.
They've got some really good key players, and they're really on board with it. And you know that Central's goal is to be as grid neutral as possible.
Yeah. It's that resilience part that's.
Yeah, I mean, and I think for a big retailer like that, in such a competitive space, it is really amazing. I do.
They really have embraced it. I think obviously they release lots of things in the grocer and all sorts of other things like that. But you know, some of the stores that we'd done with you guys are now actually net zero.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's 4 or 5 stores
there's at
that
least
are net zero. Yeah,
there's more than a few. That's for sure.
And you know, for me,
and that's award winning.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, you know, my whole thing was renewable energy. Energy saving is a holistic approach. So it's not just put some solar panels on your roof. That's just one small part of the jigsaw. You know that. Well, we know that, and the co-op know that as well. And I think that's been key. You know, controls, refrigeration controls, LED lighting. There's a lot of things that
still doesn't happen, does it?
Not like we know it should do.
Yeah.
But if anyone's embracing it and doing it right, then they are.
I think when we did the first batch of 50, we did that small, so the added value which we kind of agreed between ourselves was chuck in a small energy audit. You know, there were 300 grand on the table, even when you're putting a solar on. So I think that's kind of interesting. I want to ask you a question now then about, so we go from 220 with Central England. You've just managed to pull off a contract on a framework with the rest of the co-op.
Yeah.
What's the size of that?
So the co-op group is probably the biggest organisation throughout the UK's regional co-ops. So for those people that don't know, probably just see a co-op. The co-op split into all different regions. So we've got Central England, we've got Scottish and Southern, we've got Mid Counties, we've got Lincolnshire. So they're all split into various regions. Co-op group is probably the biggest regions, and they've got stores. They've got stores up and down the country, but they don't just run the stores. They run the distribution centres as well. So the 12 distribution centres alone, there's probably 20-25 megawatt worth of PV to go on roofs there.
So that doubles what you've done.
Doubles what we've done, and then 2,500, 3,000 retail stores for us to
2,500.
Yeah. So we're 10xing what we've
10x.
If we get all that work, I mean, we're on the framework, and we've partnered with a company called Shorten Energy, who are a brilliant, fantastic company. Again, personal relationships that we've sort of built over the years, and Shorten's are providing the PPA funding for the co-op rollout. So working with those guys, we're going to deliver some serious numbers for co-op group, and obviously you're going to be a part of that. So
good. Very good. Very good. I think the thing is, it's like, you know, again, the relationship goes back to that point where realistically, I've said to you before, you know, just give us work, we'll work our ticket, we'll add value where we can, we won't let you down. I think potentially we've run out of time. There's all sorts of other stuff we could have been talking about. Solar monitoring, football, boys,
rugby,
our
kids,
boys. Yeah. So I think maybe we need to do another one. We said this last time, didn't we? We brought in Rich Capper, Rich were great, and then we said, right,
again, somebody that I've worked for when he were at Marshalls.
Yeah. So what I'd like to say, Tony, is it's a pleasure to see you again.
No, absolute pleasure.
I'll
Thank
see you on Friday.
You will do, yeah.
But thanks for coming in. It's been nice to speak with you.
No, pleasure.
Thanks very much.
No worries. Cheers.